In 1933, a car rolled into the Chicago World's Fair that looked like nothing anyone had ever seen. 3 wheels, a teardrop body. It could do 120 miles an hour and fit 11 people inside. The press called it the car of the future. Then, on a quiet street outside the fairgrounds, it flipped and killed its driver. That single crash didn't just end one man's life. It may have ended an entire alternate future for the automobile, and the man who built it didn't stop dreaming. He went on to design a shape so strong, so efficient, that it's still being built today, from the Arctic to the Arizona desert. This is the story of Buckminster Fuller's biggest gamble and his biggest win. By the end of this video, you'll understand why one of these inventions basically disappeared and why engineers still can't fully explain how the other one is so strong. Before the car, before the dome, Buckminster Fuller was, by most conventional measures, a failure. He was kicked out of Harvard twice. His first business collapsed. In 1927, at 32 years old, broke and grieving the death of his young daughter, he stood on the shore of Lake Michigan and considered ending his life. Instead, he made a different decision. He'd spend the rest of his life testing whether one person could actually change how millions of people lived using nothing but design. He wasn't a trained engineer. He wasn't a trained architect. He was, in his own words, an options thinker. Someone obsessed with a single question: how do you get the most out of the least amount of material? That question would define everything that came next. By the early 1930s, Fuller turned that question toward transportation. Cars at the time were boxy, heavy, inefficient. Fuller thought that was insane. He designed something radically different, a 3-wheeled, teardrop-shaped vehicle he called the Dymaxion car, a name blending dynamic, maximum, and tension. The numbers were staggering for 1933. 120 miles per hour, top speed, fuel economy nearly triple a standard car of the era, a turning radius so tight it could parallel park by spinning almost in place, room for 11 passengers. It debuted at the Century of Progress World's Fair in Chicago and instantly became a sensation. Investors lined up. Newspapers ran the Car of Tomorrow story on their front pages. Then, on October 27, 1933, one of the 3 prototypes crashed near the fairgrounds. The driver was killed. A passenger, a foreign dignitary who happened to be riding along, survived. The press coverage was brutal. Never mind that the crash was later found to involve a collision with another vehicle, not a design flaw. The damage was done. Investors pulled out overnight. The narrative, the 3-wheeled car of the future kills its driver, was impossible to walk back. Only 3 Dymaxion cars were ever built. One still exists today. And where it ended up might surprise you. We'll get to that. Fuller kept refining the design for years, but he never found funding again. The Dymaxion car became one of the most famous what could have been stories in automotive history. A genuinely radical idea, killed less by its engineering than by its timing, in a single unlucky afternoon. After the car, Fuller shifted his obsession from how people move to how people live. He'd already been experimenting with lightweight, mass-producible housing. The Dymaxion house, a circular aluminum home hung from a central mast, engineered to be shipped anywhere on Earth and assembled in a day. It never reached mass production either, but it planted the seed for Fuller's most successful idea of all. He kept returning to one shape in nature that seemed to solve every structural problem at once: the triangle. Triangles, unlike squares or rectangles, don't deform under pressure. They distribute force evenly across every edge. Fuller realized that if you built a sphere entirely out of interlocking triangles, you could create a structure that was extraordinarily strong while using a fraction of the material of a conventional building. He called it the geodesic dome. The math wasn't entirely new. Engineers had sketched similar geometry decades earlier. But Fuller was the one who turned it into something buildable, patentable, and marketable at scale. The dome had properties that seemed almost too good to be true. As it scales up in size, its strength to weight ratio actually improves. It encloses more space with less surface area than almost any other structure. It can be assembled quickly from lightweight, prefabricated parts. The U.S. military took notice almost immediately, deploying geodesic radar shelters in the Arctic in the 1950s because the shape could withstand extreme wind and snow load with minimal material. Then came the moment that made the dome a cultural icon, the 1967 World's Expo in Montreal. Fuller designed the American Pavilion, a 20-story geodesic sphere that became the most photographed structure at the entire fair. Suddenly, the dome wasn't just an engineering curiosity. It was a symbol of the future itself. Here's the part that separates the dome from almost every other invention of the future. It didn't stay in the past. Geodesic domes are still being built today for reasons that would make total sense to Fuller. They're cheap, strong, and efficient. You'll find them as research stations in Antarctica, chosen specifically because the shape survives brutal winds. The climate-controlled biomes at Eden Project in the UK, emergency and disaster relief shelters, because they can be shipped flat and assembled fast. Backyard greenhouses and glamping domes, because the same math that works at 20 stories works at 12 feet. Engineers today still marvel at one property of the dome. Its strength scales up faster than its weight does as you build it bigger, a phenomenon that's counterintuitive even by modern structural standards. And that surviving Dymaxion car, it didn't end up in a junkyard. It's preserved today in the National Automobile Museum, one of the only physical remnants of Fuller's biggest gamble, sitting just a few hundred miles from domes built using the idea that came right after it. Two inventions, one built at the exact wrong moment, doomed by a single crash it barely caused. The other so structurally sound, it's still being built more than 70 years later, from Antarctic research bases to your neighbor's backyard greenhouse. Fuller's real lesson wasn't the car or the dome individually. It was that being too early and being wrong aren't the same thing.